Ingeloakastimizilian, or in the common tongue, Icing Death, was a white dragon that lived in Icewind Dale. He was killed by Drizzt Do'Urden and Wulfgar in The Crystal Shard. Convenience and conciseness would demand that we use his common tongue translation of Icing Death for this video. However, I am not a coward, and so will refer to him in the draconic Ingeloakastimizilian. Today we will scratch build and paint his lair, and paint this miniature, all featuring the brand new Army Painter Warpaints Fanatic range. Now, Army Painter did send me this box to review, but my opinions are my own. Okay, it's an expensive box. I'm probably not going to say much negative about it. What you should do is look at the close-up footage that I've included in this video, watch the paint perform, and let that performance speak for itself. Bottom line up front is the paint's performance meets its promise. The coverage is fantastic. Right off the bat, let's see if those promotional videos are true. You've probably seen this video of them showing off how strong the coverage is directly over raw black. So I did this same experiment. And yes, sure enough, the coverage is stronger than any other line that I've ever used. Now with some colors that's easy to do, it's not a particular accomplishment, but the reds, oranges, and yellows in particular, I had my doubts. And yet, here it is. Gorgeous. Still going to require 2 coats, but that's at least better than 8 coats. And as for orange, which I've always found the most challenging, here's another Army Painter orange from the old formula, and if we try them side by side, it is clear what an utter difference the Fanatic range is. So with that experiment done, it was time to get organized. Last year, my friendly local gaming shop closed its doors, rest in peace High Tide Games, so they liquidated everything. I went in and this hadn't been sold yet, so I picked it up. A full official Army Painter retail rack. Completely impractical, total waste of space, but, I mean, looks cool. Now, I didn't have the full range of paints, but I had a small smattering left and matched them where they're supposed to be. Thing is, if these Fanatic war paints are supposed to wholly replace them, I shouldn't have need for these anymore. So I think I'm going to throw these out, and I'm going to take the back of the box, cut out these hexes, and glue them on here, and use this as my paint storage rack. We'll begin with the cave itself. This is nothing new. The base is some 2-inch XPS foam, cut crudely with a hot wire to make it look like the edge of a glacier, carved some cracks in, used a heat gun to distort it, and then built up the cave walls using some expanded polystyrene, just because I had it lying around and it's cheaper and it's going to get covered up anyway. I built all these with hot glue on its low setting, and I made sure to include a few outcrops to act as tactical positioning, make it more interesting for the players. These overhangs need to accommodate 1 or 2 28mm miniatures. With that skeleton built, I went to sculpt a mold. Been a while since I've used this, and it can be finicky, but eventually I got the whole thing covered up. To paint up this cave, I followed the instructions from the perennially underviewed channel Atmoseeker, specifically this video, and I'll put a card on the screen. Since that video exists, I'm not going to repeat it all here. A lot of dry brushing with light grays, a couple browns, and graduating up to light blues. Then I tried my first Fanatic paint, royal blue, and thinned with some of the stabilizer. I want this to tint the cave, not paint it blue. So the stabilizer thins it out without watering it down. I gave this a sporadic spot treatment, but probably covered, 75% of the piece. Then, before doing the miniature, I wanted to audition this deep azure color. So I loaded that up and airbrushed upwards only. And after that, I went in with some white and did a manual dry brush, fairly light and kind of sporadic, and mostly focusing on edges. Didn't want to overdust it here because I'm going to do snow later. Now, the lair of Ingeloakastimizilian should be rife with treasure. He would have mounds of it all over the place. So I made some smooth mounds with hot glue. While it was still hot, I set in some flat back gemstones, and after it cooled, I used white PVA glue to affix some gold glitter. Treasure piles. Again, following that Atmos Seeker video, I drew out some large icicles with my hot glue gun on a silicone mat, textured them, and affixed them around the cave. Lastly, a bit of snow, and again, nothing new here. Classic miniatures recipe. 1 part baking soda, 1 part white acrylic paint, and 1 part white glue. Mix it up and slosh it on. You know, even if I only use this piece once, the joy of making these dead simple dioramas just never gets old. And I want to continue to harp on the same thing I have in the past. Don't be afraid of bold colors. May not be as realistic, but sure is more fun and more cool looking at the table. Paints dry much subtler than they look wet. So don't be afraid to use a primary blue or green or red. Also, here's a rapid insight from right now as I'm recording this. I think the snow patches are too evenly distributed. It's easy to fall into the trap of evenly distributing natural terrain features, but in fact, most things are not like that in nature. So like whatever tunnel the snow would have blown into in this cave, that's where it should have been concentrated and heaped up. And again, watch Atmos Seeker. And remember, if you're a 3D printer, you must check out Heroes Horde and their outstanding selection of models for your tabletop gaming, including the original True Tiles lines. Alright, all that's drying. Let's look at Durker the Sovereign Serpent, a miniature from Archon Studio that is included in this box set. After assembling and priming with God's Gift to Humanity Rust-Oleum 2X Flat Gray, I airbrushed on a 50/50 base coat of Arctic Gem and Uniform Gray. I thinned this down with a little bit of water and nothing else, just like I do with all paints, and the Fanatics perform identically. They go through an airbrush just fine. Then I did a 50/50 of matte white and Uniform Gray, though in hindsight I probably could have just used white, and I did a mostly zenithal top-down highlight with the airbrush. But I did a bad job and kind of got under the scales, so I took more of that stabilizer to thin out some Uniform Gray and applied it as a sort of like a speed paint or a wash to get into the crevices and darken them all back down a little bit, but not too much. I'm trying to stick to that source image where this white dragon really kind of glimmers and is fairly bright. There shouldn't be tremendous contrast. And once that wash was dry, I went back to the brush and did an old school dry brush with matte white all over the dragon. The set comes with 5 standard skin tones, and I wanted to experiment with those. So I took 3 of them and went light to dark on the skin of the wings. And here's what I decided on for the main ice kit. Base coat of aquamarine, wet blend on some aqua alchemy, and then wet blend on a little bit of deep azure at the end. I've only ever tried wet blending 2 or 3 times before. I'm a very casual painter. I just do things to tabletop standard. In fact, I am so lazy that I consider this to be sort of a lot of effort. Now for that very rare occasion where we do want a frosted look, I got back out the matte white and dry brushed very lightly over all of this ice. From there, it's just a few more features like the eyes, the tongue, and the teeth. The set does come with a sepia tone, not the old dark tone or strong tone or soft tone. This is a sepia, and I guess if they had to pick one, this would be a good one. It's got a lot of saturation, it's reddish and it's brownish. It can serve a lot of functions. Namely here, it's good for shading the teeth and the tongue at the same time. Few more colors to try out on the base, these brown chests and the metallic silver that comes with it, which is called mithril. I don't know if this is the same as the old shining silver. Seems pretty close to me. Bright gold, it looks like the old one, it just goes on in one coat. And once again, aged wooden chests and gold, all could be done with sepia tone. I just washed the whole damn base with it. Then after blacking out the rim, I added a little bit of snow to wherever the ground was showing through, and Ingeloakastimizilian is done. Boy, this model has a lot of good angles to it. The model is called Durker the Sovereign by Archon Studio, but I've painted him up as Ingeloakastimizilian, actually as an entry to a contest. #WargamerGames. I do not expect to win, but I do hope my entry is seen as something a little bit different. You know, even though Ingeloakastimizilian was slain by the heroes, wasn't the end of his story. A little over 100 years later, his remains were animated by the ice witch Hedrun Arnsfirth, and he, or it, was used as a tool against some do-gooders in the Legacy of the Crystal Shard adventure that was published in 2013. I find that equally hilarious and depressing, that such a majestic creature, evil though it may have been, should see such an undignified end. In the end, what do I make of this? Well, it performs as advertised, for sure. The yellows and the oranges in particular are a revelation and something I've not seen in any other line before. If you are brand new to the hobby, trying to get into it, is this a box I'd recommend? Absolutely. This would be the one to get. You'd be set for 5 to 10 years. Should seasoned hobbyists wholesale replace their kit? It's gonna vary for each one. I'm a casual painter. I do things to tabletop standard. Getting away with one coat wherever I can is ideal. So I can say from now on, if I'm not using speed paints and I'm doing the traditional route, I'm going to be pulling from this line. And I'd like to see this kit below $400. Like, as excellent as this miniature from Archon Studios is, and it is excellent, it's a beautiful sculpt, it forces a choice onto the consumer. And if you're buying this set, you're going to be investing thousands of dollars in the years to come in miniatures anyway. If the price managed to start with a 3, then people would be able to instantly correlate, oh, it's under $4 a bottle, right? 102 paints. That just seems like a magic point to me where you're going to really stick it to the competitors. But I don't know how thin their margins are. I don't know anything about anything. So these are winners for me. They performed as they advertised, as they promised. And we're not done with them. We're going to be using more of the colors and some of these cool technical paints in upcoming videos for the foreseeable future here on the channel. Data System Glow in particular is going to be cool for some cyberpunk stuff. Anyway, big thanks to Army Painter, friend of the channel, makers of some of the best paints on the planet. And thank you for watching. I'm Wylock, make things and play games.